And welcome you to Citizen TV's ongoing coverage of the tabling of the 2022-2023 budget. My name is Wahiga Mwaura. Over the next couple of hours, we'll continue to bring you insightful insights into the budget from here in studio and also from our teams who are on the ground at Parliament. In the next 2 hours or so, Treasury CS Uhuru expected to present what is Jubilee's final budget in the second term. And to talk a bit more about that, let me immediately take you to Parliament right now, where Francis Gashuri is on standby. Gashuri, what's the latest?
Thank you very much and welcome, Wahiga. I have also seen that your Kiswahili is not very bad, though a bit of touch-up, but Jamila will deal with that. This afternoon, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary is expected here at around 2:30 p.m. or thereabout to come and do what everybody is waiting to hear from him, the budget statement 2022-2023. And why April? Because most of the members of Parliament are proceeding for nominations and campaigns, and there are quite a number of bills that are related to the budget that need to be passed before that. And so you can expect some serious quorum hitches because of that absence of our members of Parliament, because they will be concentrating on the nominations and the election that is coming up in about 124 days or thereabout. And so that is why a decision was made that the budget be passed and be processed latest by the end of May or thereabout, so that members can now proceed to the campaign proper and the electoral processes that are related to the August 9th general election. And so this afternoon, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary is expected here. It's a normal sitting of the House, by the way, away from the fanfare that we used to witness previously before the 2010 Constitution was enacted. And so this afternoon session will be converted into a committee of the whole House, if you may like. And so the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary gets an opportunity to come and discuss the budget. Thereafter, members of Parliament will have an opportunity to air their views about the same. And then, of course, they will be passing the appropriations law, the county revenue allocation law, as well as the finance bill. That is a critical one, because that is where Kenyans will know what will be taxed more or taxed less, because basically the 3.3 trillion shillings budget must be financed, and so the revenue raising measures will be contained in that finance bill. And so a bit of it will be explained by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Uhuru this afternoon. So members of Parliament continue to make their way here. Remember, next week on Thursday, they will be proceeding on recess for a short period, and then by about June 8th or thereabout, the House will be adjourned indefinitely. They call it sine die, and that means our members of Parliament will still remain members of Parliament up to and including the 8th of August this year, because their term will lapse on the eve of the general election this year. And so in the event there is anything that members of Parliament will be needed to come and do, they will be recalled for special sittings between the June the 8th and 8th of August to come and transact that business. But of course, the reality of the day is that we are in a campaign season, and so a lot of them will be expected to be out there campaigning. And so let me see whether I can get a member of Parliament or two to talk to them what their expectations are in relation to the 2022-2023 budget. Let me talk to welcome, Mheshimiwa, and the 2022-2023 budget, expectations as a person, as a parliamentarian, and as a representative of the people.
This year what I wanted to say is that when you look at this budget, a few things you'll see reflect into it. One, we must appreciate that this is going to be a transition budget. Being a transition budget, the president who's exiting, Uhuru Kenyatta, will be seen. There will be an attempt to try and put in money into projects that will adhere to his regime as he exits. So you will see quite a bit of that, because really he has just about 2 months of this budget, which is July and August, before probably hands over in September. That is going to be one. Number two is largely that's what you're going to see. Then the second thing is that the deficit that we are seeing in this budget, which is about 894 billion, is a big hole for us to fill in. But if I were like I am and like all my other colleagues and Kenyans, I wouldn't be too worried about that, because over the last 5 years, we must also appreciate that our cake has grown. Our cake has grown as a country, and we do hope and are optimistic that our elections are going to be a bit peaceful. So in terms of the revenue generating measures, especially the 2.1 trillion that they hope to raise, is quite optimistic, but we do hope it is pegged on the fact that we hope that elections are going to be okay, and after that we will resume business. Should we have a disputed election that drags us on for a year, then I can tell you then the budget is really going to suffer and a lot of things are going to not fall into place. But should it work, then that's fine. Now, we have about 400 billion to hit the ceiling of the debt ceiling. That leaves us the deficit of about almost 500 billion, 840 billion for that matter. The next regime has an opportunity to do either two things. One is to increase the debt ceiling. Number two is to probably rationalize within the framework of what would be there to do it. But one of the things that is for sure is that don't look into this budget with a lot of attention. Because for sure, the first supplementary that is going to come out of this budget is going to be a rewrite of this particular budget. Because we are going to have a new president, that is inevitable. That new president will have to rewrite the budget to reflect his vision for the country at that particular point in time.
And that's actually, Mheshimiwa Mark, that's the reason why I needed to ask you. Out there, we've seen you, the politicians, make very many promises on the campaign trail. The 6,000 shillings per household, bottom-up economic model, free healthcare, and so on and so forth. Quite a number of promises are being made across the political divide. So some of those promises, you don't see them reflected in the budgetary allocations for this budget. So what happens?
And that's exactly what I'm saying. The two biggest contenders, the Kenya Kwanza Alliance and the Azimio Alliance, are not in government. This is not their budget. This is a budget of Uhuru Kenyatta, who is exiting. So for sure, the promises that Raila Odinga is giving to Kenyans and William Ruto is giving to Kenyans, on the other hand, cannot reflect in this budget. They will only reflect in the supplementary budget, which will be a rewrite of this budget. That's why I'm saying we shouldn't be too keen to look into it in that regard. So one of the things also, I think the biggest concern for many Kenyans is the cost of living. And Kenyans are asking, what is exactly is going to happen to us? The cost of fuel prices are hiking, the price of commodities is going high. And I must say that to fix the cost of living, it's not going to be a one-day affair. And I am sorry to tell Kenyans that we will have to bear with the pain just a little bit until we get in the right regime in place. Because one of the things that is going to happen in the next regime, why we have to raise more revenues is to pay our debts. But when the next regime comes into place, there are a few things they need to do. One, you can pay our debts by privatizing a number of non-performing private institutions, public institutions like, Posta, Kenya Airways and all those things, generate money, pay off a bit of debt. Number two is you can restructure our debt because the bulk of our debt is very expensive. And part of that restructuring, it means we have to talk to our development partners. So the question Kenyans need to ask themselves, which regime are we going to put in place? Is it a regime that is going to inspire the confidence of our development partners to agree to restructure our debts, to give us a bit of a breathing space so that our cost of living can go higher? Or are we going to put in a regime that is going to be business as usual? Because what we are paying today, and I'm not afraid to say, it's part of Jubilee 1, the bulk of what was borrowed cannot be seen on the ground. Yes, there's been borrowing in the second tranche, but at least some of it can be seen. Look at the super highway that people are talking about. This highway, if you go along Mombasa Road now, you'll see a lot of warehouses coming up. You'll see a lot of SMEs beginning to mushroom. These are the guys who are going to generate revenue that we are focusing about 2.1 trillion. So if I were an ordinary Kenyan, would be to focus which leadership? And that's a question out there. Which leadership is going to inspire the confidence of our development partners to enable us, give us a bit of a breather, to enable the person who's settling into office to reorganize himself so that the cost of living can come to.
But you can't run away from the question of taxation and the cost of living, the interrelation between the two. But taxation is a parliamentary business. So when probably Kenyans see members of parliament also lamenting on social media and elsewhere like ordinary citizens, does that really inspire confidence?
Whereas taxation is a business of this parliament, and it is us who have the final approval on what tax measures the government is actually putting in place. But we have to be realistic. We are already in debt. We have to meet our obligations. So sometimes it is our wish. I mean, we would like to play populist and say we are going to waive VAT. But the question is, when we waive VAT, we are not going to pay our teachers. We are not going to maintain our roads. We are not going to do many other things. So in as much as, yes, we are representatives of the people, but we must be realistic to the circumstances under which we are operating. And for that reason is, when the tax measures, when the finance bill finally finds its way into the House, we will look at it item by item and be realistic and say, okay, fine. Whereas we want to lessen the burden, which is an easier thing to say, okay, cut down this tax, cut down VAT, for example, on fuel, which is 8%, we will reduce the cost of fuel. But the question is, are we able to meet our obligations? Because if we don't meet, the money we have borrowed from the local market, we are going to fall short. The interest rates are going to go high. So it's a whole cycle. So we have to look at a wholesome figure.
Right. Thank you very much. Mark Nyamita from Uriri constituency giving his input and views about the budget. So Wahiga, let me hand it back to you. When you get another opportunity, Sam Gituku and I are on standby to do the needful. Back to you.
Francis Gashuri, thank you so much, and some very insightful